Hello everyone and happy Halloween to all of you. I really hope you enjoyed this month of spooky fall-inspired stories. Don't forget to hit the like button, to hit the subscribe button. Tell your friends if they're interested in fanfiction. It motivates me greatly when I see that you enjoy the stories. And I really enjoyed recording them for you. I really enjoyed sharing them with you. So I hope you will enjoy our grand finale, our last story. It is a long one. It is a Drarry. It is sweet. It is folly. It's just wonderful. So, buckle in and let's enjoy this last story of Spooktober. And Draco Makes 4 by Drarry Ruined Me. Summary. Right when Harry was about to become the youngest Head Auror in a century, just as everyone else expected of him, he made a decision that changed his life. Adopting twins wasn't in his plans, but Harry was about to discover that unplanned things are the best ones, including Draco Malfoy entering the occasion. A Drarry fanfiction. Harry closed his eyes and tried to remind himself he'd really wanted this, with every single fibre of his being. He wanted it so much he'd gone through with the adoption against everyone else's judgment, against Hermione's abrupt questions. "Don't you want to wait for the right person?" And Ron's yawns. "Mate, it's hella tiring. Why do you want to go through it alone?" And Mally's perplexed glances. Because it was worth it. Harry knew it. He knew it was worth it. He took a deep breath and counted counted to 3, because there wasn't time for more, and approached the playpen thinking, "I want this." The twins were inconsolable. It was dinner time and Harry was busy heating up their bottles while simultaneously trying to cook something for himself when they'd started crying. In all honesty, they weren't always this desperate. But earlier someone outside had made a noise. Harry thought he recognized the wheels of luggage, a door opening and then closing, and the twins had started crying in a blink. What a fantastic welcome they were giving their new neighbor. Harry remembered seeing a sign on the door of his building stating that somebody new was moving into the apartment right across the hall. He hoped he and the twins wouldn't make these new neighbors run away like he suspected they had with the previous occupant. So here they were. Harry tried everything in his arsenal to make the crying stop, but to no avail. They didn't stop wailing even with the prospect of drinking their beloved milk. Not with Harry singing and lulling them gently. Not with some classical music or a warm bath or, seriously, nothing. Harry was at a loss. He was mad, an idiot. What the fuck did he think he was doing adopting twins by himself? Everyone was right, he was a failure. He was going to be a disaster and forever ruin his kid's life. The doorbell rang, startling him. At the same time, an acrid smell coiled through the flat from the kitchen. His dinner. Coming. Just one sec," he yelled in the general direction of the door, silently praying it was a late visit from Hermione. Despite being the most vociferous in opposition to the adoption, she was completely enamored with the twins. In the kitchen, the air was thick and smoky. Harry's eyes smarted and started to tear up. He flicked his wand and vanished the burnt pan with its charcoaled content. With another flick, he opened the windows. "They're going to take away the twins from me if I keep this up," was the thought that struck Harry, and a sudden panic seized him. It was hard, yes, but he loved them entirely now, and right at the door. As he rushed to open it, the person behind started saying, "I can come another time if it's—" And Harry, throwing it open, had more or less 3 seconds to register several things at once. The twins were still crying, probably trying to break the sound barrier. He was in pajamas still stained with spit milk from the day before, and his house smelled horribly of burnt eggs. Worst of all, tears were streaming down his cheeks. Oh yes, also, Draco Malfoy was standing at his doorstep, holding a pan of something in his hands. "Potter?" he asked, bewildered, craning his neck to look behind Harry. His eyebrows shot to his hairline. "You live here?" Before Harry could say anything stupid like, "Life is cruel," or, "Of course it's you, now seeing me at my worst," Malfoy seemed to realize it was an idiotic question. He shook his head and said instead, his pointy nose scrunched up, "What's that awful smell?" Harry ran a hand through his hair. Fucking hell. When was the last time he'd showered? And started laughing in Malfoy's face. Or crying. Or perhaps both at the same time. He wasn't rightly sure. "My dinner," he sobbed. "And why was Malfoy in your building?" Ron inquired, Leo dozing off on his chest. Hermione was cooking dinner just as she did every Friday night. She turned to, rolling her eyes. "Ron, don't let him sleep at this hour. He'll never settle back to sleep later, and he'll keep Harry awake all night." Harry snorted as he slid Iris into her high chair, buckling her up carefully. "It's okay, Herm. He keeps me awake anyway." Harry sighed, rubbing his face with a hand. Ron flashed him a grin. "He's moving in," Harry said belatedly in response to Ron's question. It was the oddest thing. He's moving into the apartment right across the hall. Can you believe it?" "It's certainly a funny coincidence," Hermione said. She put a ladle on the counter and set a timer to 10 minutes. "But I sort of get it. Draco's been trying hard to rehabilitate his name since he came back from France. Living in a Muggle neighborhood is a smart move." Ron rolled his eyes. "Are you still catching up with that pig-faced Parkinson?" "Ron, don't call people names, and yes, I am. We work together, as you well know. She's changed, you know she has." Harry chuckled, as he took Leo from Ron's arms. He gently woke the baby up to feed him. "I know nothing," Ron declared, winking at Harry. It was a recurring argument since Pansy had begun working at the Ministry Law Department alongside Hermione. "Well, I just mean," Hermione went on, empathetically now. "People can change, and Pansy tells me Draco is really trying. He's doing everything he can. You should invite him over to dinner, Harry, as a welcome gesture." Harry was thankful that Leo was already sitting in his own high chair when Hermione said those words, because he might have dropped him otherwise. "I should what?" he said. "It's weird enough that Malfoy's going to live across the hall. I'm certainly not going to get friendly with the git." Ron nodded sympathetically. "Yeah, Hermione, come on. This is a ferret we're talking about. He was a right twat throughout all our Hogwarts years." "And yet, who testified in his favor at his trial?" Hermione asked, levitating 2 plastic dishes with Leo and Iris's rice soup down in front of the babies. Ron and Hermione were looking at Harry, who could feel the first sign of a blush creeping up his neck. "That's different. I can think he's a git and yet not want him to rot in Azkaban for all eternity." He grabbed a small spoon and started blowing on the soup to feed the twins. Ron took the other spoon and turned a big grin to Leo to help Harry out. "But—" Harry started, groaning as Iris shoved Harry's hand away and spread the soup all over the table. Harry sighed, turning a stern. "Yeah, sure, Harry, believe it. Look at her. But maybe you're right. What are you actually thinking of inviting him over for dinner?" Ron's eyebrows were so high on his forehead, Harry could barely see them. It made him laugh. "That's fantastic, Harry," Hermione said, turning to them with glittering eyes. "We can organize something with Pansy, too. I'll tell her on Monday." "I can't believe you didn't tell me." Pansy grinned, taking a biscuit from Draco's favorite selection. He took a bite, rolling his shoulders. "I regret nothing. Did you meet the twins? Aren't they the cutest babies in the world?" Draco closed his eyes for a moment, hating his oldest, most Slytherin friend of all. "Not yet, but I met there screaming, thank you very much." Taking a biscuit himself, Draco dipped it into his tea. His mother used to tell him it was D-class and incredibly ill-mannered, but Draco had never really been able to break the habit. Oh, yes, they can be quite noisy, but they're truly adorable. So, what are you going to do?
Let me think.
Draco pursed his lips and stared into his cup.
Yes, nothing. I'm going to do nothing.
Haha, very funny. Oh, come on. The bloke you've been obsessed with for years is your new neighbor, and you just do nothing? An outraged gasp flew from Draco's mouth before he could help himself.
Obsessed with? Me? He was... Oh, shush. Look, I'm late. I have to go to work.
Pansy snorted, the pig, and was able to extort from Draco a promise of updating her before letting him go. Updating her about what exactly, Draco had no idea. Sure, it was a bonkers situation, but Draco had changed from that single-minded boy he'd been, and he had an incredibly busy schedule. He would probably never even meet the Git again. Intrusive thoughts about the situation never shifted far from Draco's brain during his shift at the hospital, however. He lived in France for the last 10 years and trained there as a pediatrician, but Draco had to admit he never really felt at home like he did in London. That's why he'd finally decided to come back to England, and with varying degrees of happiness, he'd discovered people had more or less moved on from the war. Very few people would still glare at him when they passed him in the streets, and everyone seemed polite enough at work with him. One thing remained stubbornly similar, though. Potter still seemed to be everyone's favorite celebrity, much to Draco's dismay. First of all, the number of kids named after him was ridiculously high. Like, seriously. Draco had started working at St. Mungo's only a week earlier, and he'd already met dozens of Harrys. And for the love of Merlin, Potter remained everyone's favorite gossip topic. Did you know that he left the Aurors just when he was about to be promoted to the youngest Head Auror in a century? Susan, his boss, asked Draco. She's been the head of the pediatrician wing for the last 20 years.
I'm sure he had his reasons,
Draco replied, hoping his tone would be polite, but at the same time inform his interlocutor that he wasn't in the least bit curious about any of it. Sadly for Draco, it hadn't worked out like that at all. Susan seemed to think his flippant comment was the perfect opening for an entire Potter speech, which Draco wasn't proud to say he discovered information he had memorized for some bizarre reason. Some of the facts had included where Potter shopped for his underwear, his favorite ice cream flavor, and his shampoo's brand. Good. At least Draco would know which one not to buy. At the end of the day, Draco's nerves were taut and twisted tight, and all he wanted was a hot bath, and not to hear any more random Potter facts for at least the next 24 hours. Obviously, life had other plans. He just arrived at home. Seriously, he had to unpack. There were boxes everywhere when someone rang his bell. Muttering spells to at least try and make some of the dust vanish, Draco opened the door, and sure as hell, Potter was on the other side with something that was probably meant to be a smile on his face, but actually looked as if he was preparing to vomit over Draco's threshold. His twins, his loud twins, Draco recalled from the previous night, were in attendance too. One hung on Potter's front and the other on his back. "Hey, Malfoy," Potter greeted with a little awkward wave of his hand. Draco took a deep breath, looking at Potter's kids resting beneficially on him. It was too cute a sight if Draco was being quite honest, especially considering that Potter didn't look on the verge of a crisis any longer, and his trousers at least fit him. Quite well, actually.
"Potter, what brings you here?"
he asked, quirking an eyebrow. One of Potter's lips curled up, and for a dreadful moment Draco's eyes followed the movement. Old habits, however, die hard, and before he could think better, sarcasm was already leaving his mouth.
"If you need a comb for your hair, I'm sorry to inform you there's nothing you can do about it. It's too late for miracles, especially considering the brand of shampoo you use."
This time, Potter's lips definitely opened in a wide grin. Let out a breathy laughter. Oh, but did Draco hate when Pansy was right. It stung like a defender. In a second, he felt like he was 15 again, laying his green dormitory bed with stacks of Potter's newspaper clippings.
No, I know that. Look, I just thought, since we're neighbours now.
Potter frowned.
How do you know what shampoo I use?
Stupid Draco and his stupid mouth.
I know everything,
Draco said, waving a dismissive hand in front of him.
What were you saying?
Potter still looked unconvinced, but he carried on speaking.
Well, would you like to come to dinner at mine tomorrow?
Oh, this wasn't good. This would be a disaster. But Draco found himself saying yes faster than he could think of reasons to say no.
I suppose that could be arranged,
he said, then tossed his head backwards.
Sorry, I'm not inviting you in, but my flat is still packed to the rafters with boxes. That's okay, Potter replied. I hope you don't mind these little devil's presents. They can be quite loud.
His eyes dropped to the little boy strapped on his chest as well, and his hand caressed the little one's hair with such pure tenderness that Draco found himself smiling at the scene.
First of all, I'm a pediatrician, Potter. I think I can handle a bit of crying in any case. And second, the two of them look so adorable, I doubt anyone could find them annoying.
The bright smile he flashed Potter was real, and Draco was pleased to see Potter return one as well. Fucked. Draco was so fucked. Throughout the entire next day, Harry's mind was constantly working to process the information that he was going to have dinner with Malfoy, of all people. No doubt he would probably take one look at Harry's flat and scrunch up his nose like he had after he'd smelled Harry's burnt dinner. Or, well, oh God! Harry ran a hand through his hair. He was surely messing it up even more, and wasn't Malfoy spot on about it? And sighed. Iris and Leo were playing with other kids at the park, sitting on a towel on the grass. They were trying their best to stuff their mouth with every wooden Lego piece they could reach. A mom sitting next to Harry chuckled and started talking, probably directed to Harry. "Your kids are adorable. What are their names?"
Oh, thanks. The girl's Iris, the boy's Leo. They love visiting the park. The true hell will begin back at home.
He heard the mum laughing and turned a grin at her.
Who's yours?
She pointed at a little girl with big amber curls, calmly trying to battle Leo's favorite teddy bear from his hands.
Emma. She's a little terror too, and I see that your Leo is already getting the taste of it.
She laughed and held her hand out to Harry.
I'm Marika.
Harry?
Marika smiled, and that right there was the reason Harry preferred going out into Muggle London. No one knew him here. He was no one's hero here. He was just Harry.
You look troubled,
Marika said, gesturing towards Harry's lap, where the label of his bottle of water lay torn in tiny pieces. He huffed, feeling his cheeks heat up. Lately, he was always such a mess that people, everyone, even someone who had never met him before, noticed straight away.
Sorry, I'll just have dinner tonight with someone I used to know a long time ago. We didn't really like each other, but now he's moved into the apartment right across the hall, and...
Harry looked up to see Marika sporting an amused expression.
And I'm sharing all of this with a perfect stranger. You must think I'm bonkers.
I really don't.
I know kids take a lot of time and effort, and maybe you have few occasions to share your thoughts with your friends.
Marika winked, then added,
Or maybe you're just a crazy lad. What do I know?
They laughed together at that, and Harry felt lighter than he had in a long time. He was just barely adjusting to the feeling when Iris let out a scream, and when Harry turned his head, it was to see her lying on her back, face red. It was probably nothing. Kids fell all the time, especially when they were as small as she was and couldn't stand very well on their own. She surely hadn't hit her head too badly. A part of Harry's brain knew all of this. Another part, though, louder and more intrusive, panicked. He froze, eyes fixed on Iris crying, vaguely recognizing Marika saying words like,
Okay, she looks fine. Hear me?
I have to take her to the hospital.
Harry croaked out, finally standing up to reach Marika, who'd gone to help Iris.
I really don't think that's necessary. She's my kid. I wasn't paying attention, and
I have to take her to the hospital, make sure she didn't.
Harry took Iris in his arm and gently cradled her, trying his best to soothe her. Marika stood up.
Do you need any help?
If she thought Harry was going crazy, she didn't show it. She looked genuine in her offer, but the only place Harry could take his baby was St. Mungo's, and he couldn't certainly take Marika there.
Can you please help me put Leo in a stroller?
Harry could hear the fright in his voice and tried his best to calm down, especially since Iris had stopped crying and was now busy trying to take Harry's glasses off, as if nothing had happened. But Harry couldn't stop his mind from thinking the accident was his fault. It was obvious that he was a bad parent, and this was just a 1000th demonstration of it. He needed to fix it. Marika pushed the stroller with Leo in it towards Harry and said,
It's going to be okay.
All Harry could reply was,
Thank you,
before he practically ran to the nearest apparition point. Without a second of hesitation, Harry went straight to St. Mungo's. The first thing Harry noticed was the pediatrician ER was chaotic. Kids were crying and screaming all over the place, and their parents had tired, wrung-out faces. He stopped for a moment, fearing he was indeed overreacting. Felt Iris' head and found a small bump there. It was good, right? He'd read something about bumps being a good sign. Or maybe it was the other way around. He couldn't remember, and he certainly wasn't a healer, so he'd done the right thing coming here, right? A nurse approached him with a smile.
Mr. Potter, is everything all right? We'll do everything in our power to give you the best assistance we possibly can.
And there, right there, was the reason why Harry hated the Wizarding World. He didn't want priority access just because he was Harry Potter. It was especially infuriating when all those other parents had been waiting longer than him.
I can wait. Iris banged her head, but...
Potter?
Right.
Malfoy said he was a pediatrician.
Malfoy, Is there something wrong with the twins?
I looked at him as if salvation personified stood in front of him, but guilt gnawed at him again.
It's nothing serious. These are other people. Don't mention it. We've already triaged all the kids in the waiting room. Please follow me.
Malfoy's voice was different. It was soft and low, and it immediately put Harry at ease, calming his frenetic heart. He still was rather distressed, however, so Harry barely noticed Malfoy's office when they entered it. He barely noticed anything at all until Malfoy performed a series of magical checks and spells on Iris, asked Harry what happened, and declared that everything looked fine. That's when Harry finally released a huge, shaky breath and let himself take a look around Malfoy's office. Lee was playing with some stuffed animals on a soft carpet, one of those made of big puzzle pieces. Harry should really get one of those. Iris was smiling beatifically up at Malfoy as he made faces at her, used a cute, sweet voice. The entire office was plastered with drawing by kids.
Nice office.
Malfoy turned with Iris cradled in his arms. He smiled, and offered her to Harry, who immediately took her and started cooing at her as she relaxed into his arms.
Thank you,
Malfoy said then, sitting in the chair in front of Harry's. Harry felt suddenly stupid and overdramatic, and what was even worse, he'd shown all of his parent craziness in front of Malfoy twice by now.
Malfoy, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have... Don't apologize,
he said with the same soft voice he'd used earlier. It made Harry's lungs work better for some reason. He felt his cheeks heat up.
You made the right call. You were worried about your child's welfare and wanted her checked out. That's perfectly normal with one's first child. But I made such a scene.
Malfoy shook his head.
With time, you'll learn to distinguish better between a real peril and a simple accident. But it's early days yet, and you ought to give yourself some credit."
At that moment, Leo started to wobble towards Harry, and Harry found he had no idea what else to say. Maybe Malfoy was right after all.
"Seriously, don't think too much about it. You're not the first worried parent I've met today, and you won't be the last. I'll see you tonight."
Malfoy asked, and Harry's mind finally cleared. Malfoy was sitting there, being so nice and professional, and all Harry could think was that he looked good in the soft pink heeler scrubs he was wearing. More than good. He was mouth-watering. And distracting. Yes, right," Harry replied awkwardly, already cringing at the thought he had nothing even remotely fancy enough either to eat or to wear later at dinner with Malfoy that night. Draco had been forced to face many things in his life. The constant disappointment that he'd been in his father's critical eyes, taking a mark he didn't believe in, torturing people he didn't want to hurt, and coming out as gay as his father's face morphed into pure disgust. He swore that all that seemed like nothing in the face of having dinner with Potter and his twins. He stood in front of Potter's door for longer than he would have liked to admit, a bottle of red wine in one hand and a tub of ice cream in the other. He remembered Susan telling him Potter's favorite flavors, and he thought it was a funny idea, but now he only felt extremely ridiculous. Draco was about to turn around and run for his life, an excuse already forming in his mind, when he heard Potter's voice from inside.
"Whenever you're ready, the door's open." The bloody git! Was he spying on Draco?
Feeling his face flame, Draco slowly opened the door, and this time Potter's apartment looked, well, less chaotic. The scent wafting through Potter's home was a good one, at least.
"Made your choice, did you?"
Potter asked, sticking his head out of his kitchen store with a smirk. Draco rolled his eyes, trying to feign a confidence he wasn't feeling. He repeated once again to himself he wasn't on a date.
"Did you try to comb your hair? It looks even more hideous. What is your problem with it?"
He heard Potter chuckle as Draco reached him in the kitchen. He and Iris were already sitting at the table, hands and faces covered in an orange substance that Draco thought would be better remaining unidentified. Draco found himself smiling fondly at them both within seconds.
"They are really adorable, you know that, right?"
Potter turned with a bright smile. Damn it, it was a cute smile.
"I know, thanks. Oh, you brought wine. You're a lifesaver. I think the last time I had a bottle of wine in this house was years ago." "You're a disaster, Potter."
Draco joked as he uncorked the bottle. Harry passed him a pair of wine glasses, and Draco filled them.
"I even brought ice cream, chocolate and pistachio. I hope it's okay,"
he said, trying not to smirk.
"Really? They're my actual favorite flavors. Thank you, Malfoy." "What a coincidence,"
Draco said, this time feeling the inevitable smirk forming on his lips. Potter seemed not to notice.
"So tell me, do you always invite your new neighbors for dinners? Is it something you do with muggles?"
Draco had really tried to sound sarcastic and detached, but something in his face must have betrayed him. Potter took a casserole of lasagna out of the oven and brought it on the table with a shark-like smile.
"Oh, so that's true. Draco Malfoy is trying to make his way into the muggle world. That ought to be funny. I could tell you so many lies." "That would be rather Slytherin of you,"
Draco said, raising an eyebrow, and watching as Potter's grin widened even more.
"You have no idea,"
he replied, with a glint in his eyes that made Draco's cheeks heat up in a second. Were they somehow flirting or something? He was quickly distracted, however, as he watched Potter plate their lasagna with a fork and a knife. It wasn't the first time Draco saw him not using magic for simple tasks, and before he could change his mind, he asked,
"Just out of curiosity, why do you cook the Muggle way? Or anything, really?"
Potter shrugged.
"Partly I try to avoid it when I'm in the building since it's a Muggle neighborhood, but partly it just feels more natural sometimes. I've grown up as a Muggle, as I'm sure you truly well know."
He raised an eyebrow as Draco's glass suddenly filled with wine again.
Now you're just showing off, Draco chuckled and sipped his wine. Or you're trying to get me drunk.
Maybe both,
Potter replied, and again, Draco had the distinct impression they were flirting. But no, that was impossible. This was Potter, for fuck's sake, chosen git and the bane of Draco's younger life. The rest of their dinner, however, seemed to be going pretty well. Not only were they managing to have civil conversation, but Iris and Leo seemed fascinated with Draco and every expression he'd made, and Potter seemed to notice too. They were scooping the ice cream into their bowls when Harry said,
"Well, you know, Malfoy, if I had said to my 15-year-old self that one day I'd have a civil dinner with you."
"I know,"
Draco snorted, side-eyeing Potter and trying very hard not to think about his own 15-year-old self and his Potter obsession.
"It just seems weird to see you so well adjust amongst the muggles,"
Harry added.
"People change, Potter. Not me, of course. I have the most nefarious of reasons."
Draco sighed dramatically, which made Iris burst into a peal of adorable laughter. Leo, on the other hand, was yawning widely. Potter looked at them both with love in his eyes.
"If you could wait 5 minutes, I need to put him to bed."
Draco nodded. He watched Potter take Iris and Leo in his arms and disappear to his bathroom. As soon as Draco heard the first demanding cry, he understood it wouldn't be only 5 minutes. With his glass of wine in hand, Draco took the liberty of getting up and looking around Potter's living room. There were pictures of Potter with the twins and various members of the Weasley family all around the place. Just as he was examining a picture of Potter at the seaside with Granger and Weasley, Potter re-emerged.
"Sorry it took me so long,"
he said, yawning.
"They were a bit agitated."
Draco turned, looking as Potter sat on a sofa, a glass of wine in his hand as well.
"You can sit down too, you know."
"Yeah, I was just... These pictures are beautiful."
Potter exhaled slowly, a small smile playing on his lips. Draco took the hint and sat down next to him on the sofa.
"Thank you. Sometimes I think I'll go crazy. Gosh, today I made such a fool of myself."
"I already told you you didn't,"
Draco answered, took a fortifying sip of his wine and finally asked the question he'd been dying to know the answer to since he got back to England.
"There's something I was wondering about. They say you left the Aurors right when you were about to become the youngest Head Auror in a century."
"They say a lot of things."
Potter's tone went cold and Draco feared he had stepped too far. Indeed, it was a particularly personal question, and the two of them had only just started to get, friendly? After years of hatred first and a complete lack of contact after that? But then Potter brought a hand to his face, sipped his glasses up onto his forehead and scrunched his eyes.
"Sorry, I just..."
Looked at Draco with a sad smile.
"Excuse me. I'm tired. I don't need to explain myself to you, but you brought pretty good wine tonight, so..."
He took a sip and went on.
"I was tired of always being precisely what people wanted me to be. Tired of being special. The youngest Seeker in a century. The savior. The youngest Head Auror. When all I wanted to be was Harry. Just Harry. Do you know what Harry really wanted?"
Draco looked at him in silence until he understood he was actually meant to answer Potter's question.
Draco tots?"
Potter laughed. The sound was lovely and infectious, and Draco chuckled as well.
"Well, yeah, that also. But mainly I wanted family, I wanted kids. I know my choice was questionable and maybe even a little bit foolish, that if I had waited just a bit longer, I would have found the right person to have kids with, but I looked inside of myself. All I could find in my heart was the desire to have my own kids and give them all the love I could."
For a brief, terrible moment, Draco thought he was going to cry. For Merlin's beard's sake, actually cry in front of Potter because of his confession. In the end, Draco was able to rein it in. He cleared his throat.
"I don't think it's a foolish choice. I think it suits you. It's brave, reckless, and shows that you have a good heart."
At Potter's dumbfounded expression and gaping mouth, Draco giggled.
"Look, I've never forgotten what you did for me and my mother. You spoke for us at our trials and spared us life in Azkaban's cell. You didn't have to do that. You literally gained nothing from it. I owe you a lot, Harry Potter. And if anyone deserves to do what they really want and live their best life, then that's you."
A long silence followed Draco's statement. So long that he feared for a moment he would have to move out again until Potter sighed heavily and looked at him thoughtfully.
"Well, I can say with absolute certainty that I wasn't expecting to have a deep, meaningful conversation with Draco Malfoy tonight. Or ever, actually. Yeah, me neither. Don't get used to it. I'll be annoying and a really bad neighbor for the rest of my time here. We already have Mr. Wilkinson for that. I meant to tell you about him. He's 2 sickles short of a groat, I think. He always rings my door to complain of non-existing problems at the most questionable hours of the night."
Draco almost spat out his wine.
"What? Oh, yeah. And we also have Mrs. Forfair. She lives downstairs and has 12 cats. Don't ever take the elevator with her, or she'll tell you all about the new dresses she bought her cats." "You're kidding, right?"
Potter grinned.
"Nope. Welcome aboard."
Things escalated in the next month. The truth was, Harry still felt overwhelmed most of the time with his twins. And yes, Malfoy, Draco now, was a pediatrician, and wasn't that just the world's most extremely helpful coincidence? So, okay, yes, Harry would bell Draco's door any other day with every question under the sun. One day, it was because Leo's nappy had a blue stripe in it, and what was happening to his intestines, Draco? Turned out it was the nappy's colouring. Harry had noticed it because it was 2 a.m. Draco had glared at him as he kept muttering about boundaries and disturbing the sleeping dragon, and
"I almost prefer Mr. Wilkinson, Potter,"
which was saying a lot. Harry was there when Mr. Wilkinson had knocked on Draco's door to scold him because a rat had invaded his kitchen.
"What do I have to do with the old crumbling plumbing of this building?"
Draco asked, his expression so baffled that Harry hadn't been able to resist. He'd burst out laughing in Mr. Wilkinson's face. The old bloke had just scoffed and said,
You certainly seem to know a lot about it."
It had even gotten to the point where Draco had given Harry his work timetable. Harry found it touching and sweet, and when he said those words aloud, Draco's face turned in such an intense shade of red that he resembled a tomato.
"I'm just doing it to get you out of my way,"
he'd said, which didn't make much sense. And anyway, Draco always answered Harry's calls, his knocks, his bells, and everything else he needed. Iris and Leo had gotten so used to Draco that sometimes he even helped Harry to put them to sleep. The 2 babies simply adored Draco. Leo, who Harry thought was a solitary kind of kid, would laugh the loudest laughter in the world whenever Draco played with him. Iris would fall asleep in his arms within seconds just from listening to Draco's soft lullabies. There was a thought that was currently invading Harry's mind as he watched the twins cuddling each other on his bed. The mornings would just pass like that, as simple and happy as clams, and they were Harry's favorite times in his life. The twins would wake Harry up at 6, and he would change them and give them each a bottle of milk. They would then all go back into Harry's bed, cuddling and listening to the sound outside. A bird chirping, the rain falling against the windows, the wind blowing between the trees' branches. Harry wondered whether his routine ought to be somehow different. Perhaps it wasn't a great educational example, but sometimes Harry just didn't have the strength to do anything different. It was 2 against 1, after all. Iris and Leo always looked extremely content to play with each other and touch each other's faces. It looked to Harry like they were trying to imprint each other in their memory. Whenever they started touching Harry's face too, his heart would swell 10 sizes inside his chest. After a while, the alarm went off, signaling it was 10 in the morning. It meant Harry needed to get out of bed and prepare the twins something to eat, but that morning he just felt off. His stomach was twisting from the inside. Whenever he looked up at the ceiling, the room would start spinning. With Draco's soft voice still ringing in Harry's memory, he looked over at the pager. Draco had given it to him. It was for emergencies. Harry remembered what Draco had told him 2 months ago.
With time, you'll learn to distinguish between a real peril and a simple accident.
It was true. Harry was getting better at all of that, and today it felt like he couldn't do it by himself. Harry grabbed the pager from the nightstand and typed in the emergency code Draco had given him. The guilt made his stomach churn even more than it was already doing by itself. It vanished, however, as soon as he heard Draco entering the house and was replaced with a deep relief. Iris had started crying and Harry couldn't stand up to save his life. Her sobs were worsening the headache that had been simmering all morning.
Harry, what's up?
Draco entered Harry's bedroom and seemed to immediately understand something was off. He took Iris in his arms and lulled her until she stopped crying.
I'm sorry,
Harry mumbled. Talking seemed a Herculean effort, and all of a sudden his stomach decided to empty its contents all over Harry's bed. Thankfully, Draco had already taken both Iris and Leo and put them in their playpen.
Hey, shh, it's all right,
Draco whispered. A second later, Harry felt his magic wash over him and vanish the mess he'd just made.
I don't know what. Sorry, I called you.
Harry tried to open his eyes, but everything was blurry and the room kept spinning.
It's all right. I'm glad you did. Harry, you've got a really high temperature. It shouldn't be anything serious, but we can't be too careful. I'm gonna call a healer, okay?
Harry nodded as a shiver ran down his spine. A temperature? He hadn't been sick since he was a little kid, and Aunt Petunia used to lock him in his cupboard as a punishment, but he'd learn not to get sick again. What do you know, it actually seemed to have worked. Harry's body hadn't ever gotten sick again. The rest of the day went by in a hazy blur. Harry only remembered parts of it. Draco stroking his hair, Hermione passing by, someone giving him an incredibly sour potion. There was even a few weird dreams where he was a frog and couldn't find his prince to kiss him back to being a human. When Harry opened his eyes again, the sunlight was bathing his bed and Harry's head felt 10,000 times better. He still felt a bit nauseous, but all in all, he thought he could try and stand up. He looked at the alarm clock on the nightstand. It was 11 a.m. All right, then.
11? What?
Harry suddenly stood up. Too suddenly. He had to bend at the waist and exhale deeply to avoid crumbling down to the floor, and started looking for Iris and Leo.
Oh, Lord, how could I have overslept? Where? Harry?
Draco. That was Draco's voice.
Of course.
Harry sat again on the bed and took a deep breath.
Yeah, I'm awake.
Draco's face appeared at Harry's bedroom door. He smiled gently.
You look better. Can I come in?
Harry nodded, and Draco approached him, his wand drawn. He muttered a couple of spells and seemed satisfied by the result.
Great, your fever's gone. Of course you'll have to rest up for at least a couple more days.
But what happened? And where are Iris and Leo? Are they okay?
They're fine. Harry, please don't worry. I took them over to Molly and Arthur's a couple of hours ago.
Draco pursed his lips. He looked at Harry with a sheepish expression that Harry didn't fully understand. His cheeks were softly reddened, and he seemed hesitant.
Is there anything else? You look tense.
Harry asked, and watched as a series of emotions quickly crossed Draco's face. He seemed to finally settle on disinterest as he replied.
No. Would you like something to eat?
Harry looked at him with a raised eyebrow.
Aren't you supposed to be at work?
This time, Draco's cheeks definitely turned tomato red.
Yeah, I took 2 days off.
For me?
Harry felt stunned. No one had ever been this caring towards him before, and certainly no one had ever booked time away from their jobs. Draco bit his bottom lip and rolled his eyes, but his cheeks stayed deliciously red.
Well, it's clear you aren't capable of living without my assistance. I'm merely helping the Savior to make myself look good.
Before Harry could reply and comment about how that was a total and blatant lie, Draco turned towards the door.
Take a shower, he ordered. I'll prepare something light for lunch.
A shower sounded like a good idea, and it really was. The warm water did wonders to Harry's sore muscles, and scrubbing the sweat away from his skin felt liberating. As the hot spray of the water hit Harry's back, some images from the night before came back to him. Or were they hallucinations from his fever? Draco's lips on Harry's, his hands gently pulling at the hair on his nape, his hard cock pressing against Harry's side. Fuck! Harry's cock filled up, and his mind kept giving him images of Draco to encourage it. Merlin! When was the last time Harry had wanged, or had any kind of intimate contact with someone? Draco and he'd certainly been getting closer lately, but this was probably his imagination going wild because, well, Harry's feelings were... Shit! With a jerk, Harry grabbed a towel and ran to the kitchen, dripping water all over the floor.
Merlin, Harry, what? I kissed you!
Harry cried, still panting with embarrassment. He was now around 99% sure those images weren't, as he'd hoped, hallucinations. Draco flushed in an instant, and the blush spread everywhere. His nose, his ears, his collarbone.
Ah, don't worry. I know you were under the effect of potions and... Draco. And anyway, we're just friends, I know that, okay? I know you said all those things just because... Draco. And by the way, I didn't take advantage of you, I swear. I slept on the couch, I would never... Draco, please, look at me.
That finally stopped Draco's ramblings. Harry slowly approached him.
I'm sorry that you had to hear about my feelings for you while I was feverish and under the effects of potions, and that I jumped you.
Draco's lips quirked up.
I'm not saying I didn't like it.
Warmth spread in Harry's chest at the confession.
Look, everything I told you yesterday night is true. I really like you, as crazy as that sounds. I mean, you're Draco Malfoy. Bully, bigoted, you took the mark, almost killed Ron, and... Yes, thanks, I know my history. You don't need to remind me.
Draco hastily stood up, echoing his code.
I guess I'll see you around. Dry yourself out, or the fever won't... Oh, for the love of Draco, listen to me, please.
Draco stopped, although his expression was still guarded. Harry took a deep breath.
What I meant to say is that I've gotten to know a new Draco these past month. A different Draco. You're still you, prickly and posh, and come on, who else dresses as formally as you every day?
A muscle worked in Draco's jaw, and Harry hastened to go on speaking before he could get any angrier.
Kidding, I was kidding. I mean to say, I like you. And more importantly, my kids adore you. I could never... For a long time I haven't seen anyone else because I was occupied with my life and my kids, but you complete us. When I see you singing to Iris or make Leo laugh, I...
Harry trailed off as Draco was suddenly very, very close. So close he could feel his breath ghosting over his lips.
I like you too.
He whispered, and then he kissed Harry. It was so different from the previous night. Harry had been half drugged back then, and his kiss had been messy and sloppy. This time, Draco's lips slid perfectly over Harry's, until he gently coaxed Harry's mouth open and deepened the kiss with a growl. Harry felt the vibrations go directly to his cock, which twitched under the towel and made him suddenly feel very, very aware of his half-nakedness.
He said, breaking the kiss. I should get dressed.
Draco smirked, and a new influx of blood rushed to Harry's cock.
Should you? Oh my god.
Harry breathed.
I'm not sure I'm ready to, Oh.
Draco's eyebrows lifted, and he raised his hands in surrender.
Sure, sorry,
He cleared his throat.
I'll wait here.
Harry nodded and went to the bedroom. Had been too long since he's had anything with anyone. He hoped he could find the right way to explain it all to Draco.
Let's sum up. He kissed you and confessed his feelings while feverish and drunk.
Right,
Draco said, pacing back and forth in his living room. Pansy was sitting on his sofa, the new edition of Witch Weekly opened on her lap.
Then, the morning after, Harry confirmed those feelings while perfectly sober?
Exactly.
I honestly can't see what the problem is, darling.
Pansy said, turning a page of her magazine and gasping out loud.
My, that dress really doesn't do the minister's wife justice.
Concentration, please. I'm having a crisis.
Draco stopped in front of her, snatching the magazine from her hands.
Draco, this is not a crisis. You like him, he likes you. You're practically living together already. What's your problem?
Well, Draco supposed, when said like that, there wasn't much to complain about.
You didn't hear the awful things he said about me before, confirming his feelings, as you oh so politely said. And he didn't want to, well, you know.
Fuck.
Draco rolled his eyes.
A true princess. Yes, fuck.
Pansy pinched her nose and sighed.
Okay, I'll spell it out for you. Of course he said certain things. It's you and Potter. There's history, and he's right. You need to acknowledge what's happened between you in the past if you want to have something more. And please don't have me start on the sex thing. Just talk about it, love. Everyone has the right to take as much time as they please.
Before Draco would have had to crumble and admit that what Pansy was saying actually made sense, there was a knock on his door.
Saved by the bell,
Pansy said. Draco threw her magazine at her with a sneer.
Mother,
he said when he opened the door and saw Narcissa standing on the other side.
Weren't you in France? What are you doing here? Is this the way to greet your mother, Draco dear?
His mother said with a superior smile.
I should hope I don't need an appointment to come visit you.
She entered and stopped in the middle of the living room, looking around with her nose scrunched up. Pansy smiled at her.
I know, he decorated so poorly.
Really, Draco? I thought we taught you better than this.
Narcissa cocked her head and Draco shook his own, approaching her to give her a hug.
Always a pleasure, Mother. Can I give you a cup of tea?
Yes, please, with no sugar, she said as she primly sat beside Pansy and they started chattering about the latest gossip in Wizarding London. As if his morning wasn't being anything but weird and busy, not as Draco liked his Saturdays to be, there was another knock at the door. Internally, Draco prayed it wasn't Mr. Wilkinson. Anybody except Mr. Wilkinson. When he opened the door, however,
Harry?
Shit. Maybe Mr. Wilkinson would have been better. Narcissa immediately perked up.
Mr. Potter? Harry as in Harry Potter?
Harry, entering Draco's apartment with Leo and Iris on their double stroller, smiled warmly at the sight of his mother.
Narcissa, what a pleasure. Draco, you didn't tell me Narcissa was visiting today. I've been asking about you for a month. Draco, you didn't.
Draco closed his eyes and counted to 10. How was this his actual life? This was not happening.
Yes, well, we're neighbors. He lives right across the hall. You didn't tell her?
Harry asked, and if Draco wasn't mistaken, there was definite hurt in his tone. Narcissa, on the other hand, didn't miss a beat.
Ah, these your children. Look at them. They're so beautiful. What are their names?
Draco watched as his mother beamed at the twins and surrendered to the chaos his life had become since moving in next door from Potter.
Iris and Leo.
Harry answered just as Iris stretched her arms out and tried to wiggle out of her stroller towards Draco. He bent to kiss both of them and then picked Iris up, who immediately tucked her head in the crook of Draco's neck. His mother gave him a pointed look which Draco tried to dismiss. Thankfully, Harry didn't seem to notice it. He freed Leo instead, who crawled towards Narcissa and stood on wobbly legs with her help.
I'm sorry if I interrupted your breakfast,
Harry said, and Narcissa immediately shook her head.
Nonsense. It's a pleasure, Harry. May I call you Harry?
Yes, please, do come and make it awkward more often, Potter.
Pansy chuckled. Even Draco struggled to hold his laughter in. Harry, however, ignored her.
Of course, please call me Harry. Draco, I actually came over to ask you if you'd like to come to the Burrow with me next weekend. There'll be a big Halloween party, and it's also the twins' birthday, so it would mean a lot to me if you could come.
Pansy chortled, and Draco glared at her. She shrugged.
I was invited too. You knew that, right, Potter?
Oh, I'm sorry, Parkinson. I didn't see you there. How are you?
Harry said in an overly sweet tone. Pansy stuck her tongue out, and Narcissa looked rather alarmed over at Draco.
Don't worry, they always act like this, but they actually like each other. Well, I think so.
Harry and Pansy both chuckled.
I've got to go prepare something to eat for these two monsters,
Harry said, getting up. He turned to Draco.
Will I see you next Saturday? Sure.
Draco muttered. Harry nodded, seeming satisfied. Put Leo and Iris back into their stroller and shaking hands with Narcissa, and managing somehow to invite her to the Burrow next weekend too, he went back to his apartment. The moment the door closed, Pansy giggled.
Oh, this will be fun.
It would mean a lot to me if you could come.
Narcissa interjected immediately, looking at Draco with one eyebrow raised. Is there something I should know?
Oh, sissy,
Pansy said, leaning in closer to her.
You can't even imagine.
Draco shook his head, pleading Pansy not to.
They kissed.
Draco slapped his hands over his face as Narcissa gasped loudly.
Gracious! Their obsession must have started back in full force now. What? I am not. Darling, you kept a stack of Harry Potter pictures from every single magazine you could lay your hands on under your pillow. The house elves would find a new one every time you came back home. It used to drive Lucius mad.
Draco physically felt every drop of blood drain from his face, and his eyes widened so much he feared they'd fall out of his skull. Pansy burst out laughing so hard that she also snorted out some of the tea.
He used to do that at school too, and he thought he was so secretive about it, but we all knew.
Oh, Lord, please stop.
Draco rasped, looking at the two women with abject horror.
We are just happy that your teenage dreams come true, darling. We have a party to attend to, then?
Oh, we could go dressing up as something cool together, the three of us,
Pansy exclaimed, her eyes already glittering with amusement.
I think I'll go with Harry. Of course you will,
his mother muttered, winking at him. Halloween really wasn't Harry's favorite holiday, at all. He hated it. He hadn't had a lot of options, however, when he'd adopted the twins. It's not like one could choose their kids or when they'll be born. The chief of pediatrician, healer Susan Tucker, had called Harry a year ago that very day and informed him that the twins had been left abandoned in front of St. Mungo's door. Harry had been the first one to be notified, as he was the almost Head Auror. Hermione was the only one who'd known at the time that he'd already begun the adoption papers and, furthermore, that he was thinking of quitting the Aurors.
We don't know their exact birth date,
healer Tucker had said.
We usually use the closest date based on their weight, length, and the color of their eyes.
Harry had nodded, numbly. Would ever abandon two beautiful creatures, both of them completely harmless, in such a cruel situation? That night was freezing.
We'll just write 31st of October,
it concluded. Harry's eyes filled with unshed tears.
I want to take them home with me,
he'd said. Of course it didn't work like that. Harry had needed to go through all kinds of psychological tests and had to go to St. Mungo's every day for 2 weeks to learn how to prepare their milk, how to wean them onto food when the time would arrive to do so, and even learn how to rock them to sleep. Harry had decided their names and checked their compatibility. They had been 2 of the most exhausting weeks of his life, but Harry had never once regretted his choice. So here they were, a year later. Leo and Iris were just starting to stand up by themselves. They were healthy, happy kids, and were the center of Harry's life.
Hey!
Draco's voice reached Harry as he was finishing preparing a backpack with every twin essential that he'd need for a night out.
Hey!
Harry said, feeling heat spreading all over his cheeks. Draco tentatively reached him, leaning a hand gently on his cheek.
I know.
He started licking his lips.
I know we didn't discuss exactly what we are, but just kiss me.
Harry whispered, and he melted when Draco's lips caressed his own.
Jesus.
He murmured against him, feeling his cock swelling up.
Your lips are so soft.
Draco chuckled, breaking their kiss.
Look, I thought about it, about what you said, and I'd really like to try dating you. For real.
Harry arched one eyebrow.
I should hope so. We're going to a Halloween party, my kids' party, with coordinated costumes.
They looked at each other for a moment and burst out laughing.
Are we being crazy?
Harry asked, suddenly being serious again. Draco nodded.
I think so, but it feels good. It feels right.
He beamed and then handed Harry a bag.
It took me all week, but I finished in time. Draco, you're amazing. You sew them yourself, you posh git.
Harry perused inside the bag and took the costumes out. They were perfect. Started putting the first onto Leo as Draco worked on Iris, muttering,
either amazing or a posh git.
Harry shook his head and changed the topic.
Well, Narcissa come. She didn't want to.
Draco said, smiling down at Iris.
You are perfect, little bean.
He looked up at Harry, and Harry's heart did somersaults. It felt all so domestic and familiar. Harry hadn't even realized when it happened.
Well, anyway,
Draco went on as he finished dressing Iris up.
Andromeda wrote to my mother because Teddy and she will be returning to London for a couple of days and would like to meet with her. In the end, she decided to come. To be honest, I'm excited to meet them too.
Draco concluded, sucking on his cheek. It was a tale that Harry had gotten to recognize when Draco was nervous.
They'll love you. Mind you, Teddy's been away for almost 6 months now, so he'll have eyes only for me,
Harry said, trying to lighten the mood. It worked for Draco, rolled his eyes, and his lips turned up in a smile.
But he'll love you.
Harry scrunched his nose, side-eyeing Draco.
I won't say anything cheesy like it's impossible not to, but act as I did. Ew, Potter, too much.
And Harry would have believed Draco was truly gross, except that his face reached its typical tomato red level of blush. It was beautiful.
Take these,
Draco said, instead passing Harry a pair of earmuffs.
Do you have your old school uniform?
Harry nodded, putting the earmuffs on, looked one last time at his kids all dressed up and beautiful and funny in Draco's handmaid's costumes, and led the way to the burrow. Tell me you didn't dress up your kids as little mandrakes. Hermione sighed as soon as Harry and Draco arrived. She and Ron had chosen to be an important couple from some old book that Hermione had read, and Harry couldn't be bothered to remember. Her costume cleverly hid her swelling tummy, Harry noticed. They hadn't told anyone Hermione was pregnant again. Well, except for Harry.
They look amazing, admit it.
Hermione looked at Iris and Leo tentatively, making their first steps around with leaves sprouting from their heads and brown costumes with tiny roots coming out of their feet and legs. They do, she said. And with those golden curls, you know. Oh dear, I'm just gonna say it. They look like they're Malfoys. Harry snorted, bringing a hand to cover his face.
Please don't say it out loud. Draco's already insufferable enough about that.
She laughed and turned at the sound of Draco not far away from them, reaching Longbottom with another pair of earmuffs in his hands and saying,
Take this. Hurry, before you faint again.
Neville turned icy eyes at Harry.
You didn't date for 5 years, and now this is who you're bringing? I'm...
He raised his hand and glared at Draco, who, on the other side, was guffawing like an idiot. So, you really like him? Hermione said, pointing at the scene before their eyes.
I really do,
Harry replied, shrugging.
And the kids like him, and I don't know how. It's just working. I don't know how.
Sometimes love isn't logical at all, she said, giving Harry a brief hug. She left him to go and help Molly in the kitchen. A moment later, Harry spotted Narcissa and Andromeda talking happily as they cuddled the twins. They took picture after picture. Teddy was currently busy in a game of Catch the Gnome with Victoire. Everywhere Harry looked, there were people he loved, having fun, dressed in the weirdest and funniest ways possible, all united in the same house, on the same incredibly complicated day.
Ahem.
Draco cleared his throat from right behind Harry. He hadn't even seen him approach.
Yes? I have a question,
he declared,
circling Harry's waist from behind and kissing Harry's earlobe oh so delicately. It made goosebumps rise all over Harry's skin.
Ask away. Is there anywhere more private?
Harry turned with a half smirk at Draco's hushed tone and took his hand, leading him away from the crowd inside until they reached a desolate room in the attic. Draco looked around himself.
I have to admit, I thought this house was way worse. It's actually clever use of space and magic.
Harry smiled.
I know.
A moment of silence passed before Draco took a deep breath.
Neville said something about you not dating for 5 years. Yes? Well?
Draco turned an incredulous expression on him, his eyes wide.
Is it true?
Harry sighed, loosening his Gryffindor tie.
Yeah, I just didn't. I don't know. Everyone was looking for Harry the Savior, and I never found anyone who I could really trust. So 5 years have passed, and here you are. Here I am.
Draco repeated, eyebrows still high on his forehead.
Still, 5 years is a long time. Very.
Harry lowered his voice and pulled Draco closer by his Slytherin tie.
But as weird as it sounds, I feel like I can finally let myself trust someone else. I trust you, Draco.
Draco's expression finally softened, and Harry took the moment to push a little further. He leaned closer, whispering against Draco's lips.
You have no idea how much I need you, how much I want you to fuck me.
The way Draco's eyes widened was almost comical. His breath quickened as he murmured,
Here? At your kid's birthday party? Where they're just feet away and an entire Gryffindor ensemble just 2 floors downstairs? Anyway, seeing you in your Slytherin uniform is killing me.
Harry sat, feeling the knot that for years had locked his heart finally loosening and opening up. It felt so good to finally let go and...
Draco? Harry, it's cake time!
Pansy's voice reached him, and Harry cursed under his breath. He looked at Draco, who had a similar frustrated expression on his face. They barely had time to straighten their trousers and ties when Pansy found them.
Ah, here you are,
she exclaimed upon opening their room's doors. A grin immediately fell on her lips.
Ooh, did I interrupt something?
Nothing,
Draco gritted out. Pansy laughed, motioning to follow her.
Come on, lovebird. You'll have all the time in the world later. Right now, there's a party going on.
They followed Pansy downstairs, still breathless and laughing a bit at the weirdness of the situation, but Harry couldn't be happier than this. When they reached everyone else for the opening of the presents, Harry saw his future in front of his eyes. He saw Leo saying his first word, Pap, indifferently for food and Dad. Iris saying her first word, Dad, directed to Draco, and Harry saw himself not being even the slightest bit jealous of it because Merlin knew how much it would mean to Draco. Harry saw finally letting himself be with someone else, mornings spent together in bed, making love whilst trying not to wake the twins up. He saw birthdays spent together, Christmases. Most of all, Harry saw happiness.
A sickle for your thoughts,
Draco murmured when all the presents were opened and the kids were yawning profusely. Harry grinned.
What do you think of coordinated Christmas jumpers?
The end. Hello everyone and happy Halloween. I really hope you enjoyed this wonderful month of spooky or fall-inspired stories. I had a blast recording them. I'm so happy to share them with you. Let me know what story was your favorite. Just drop it down in the comments. I'd be really interested to hear what your favorite story was. As I said, I really hope you enjoyed it, and don't go anywhere because November is packed with some goody stories. We have some Hermione coming on. We have some Drarry. Of course, the German fanfictions will be continued. And then for December, we're doing an advent calendar as we did last year. So there's also a lot of goodies coming to this channel. Don't forget to subscribe so you're always up to date. And I hope to hear you all very soon.